Hey guys, welcome back to Celebrate the Struggle. And you're going to be peanut butter and jealous because I am here today with Jared Diehl. He is a fellow podcaster and someone who is an advocate for mental health. So, Jared, welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I feel like we just talked a few weeks ago. So
I know. It's nice though. I really enjoy chatting it up with you. Like I told you, like from the minute that I heard you on a podcast, I felt like we were on similar missions, not just like with things from the past that we deal with, but like how we want to use that toward helping other people. So enough with me rambling. That was such a so we were just talking before we pushed record how like we both aren't like very squared away on having these big intros, and maybe we'll be there someday if we feel like it. But I said that you are a fellow podcaster. You have your own podcast. Tell everybody a little bit about it so I don't just steal the show.
Yeah, sure. Well, I started the podcast like 3 years ago, kind of the beginning of 2019, and about like a few months before that, I had been traveling a lot with my job. I was kind of on like my third year of moving around a lot, and so there was a couple of like suicides that happened kind of locally. There was like a pastor who died. It was like August 2018. So I don't know, a couple of different things happened. It was like the beginning of the school year, and that hearing about that stuff kind of just prompted me to like, I don't know, I was on an airplane, I started writing, and I've always been, journaler, writer kind of person.
Ooh.
And so I don't know, I had taken a break from speaking at all. I did like some mental health speaking back like 2 years before this. So anyway, long story short, it kind of just started this like, maybe I should start talking about this stuff. And so I started doing a couple of like YouTube videos. And then a few months later, my roommate like let's do a podcast. So, and we recorded it, and like I thought I was going to be a guest on his podcast because he had one and he had all the equipment, which was cool. You don't always have that. Like, hey, I have all the microphones. And so he's like, no, let's do your podcast. And I was like, I don't, what's my podcast going to be about? And I was like, oh, I'll just tell my story. And so it's kind of funny how it started. And so we did about 12 episodes together, and that was kind of like season one. And then now I've kind of just pretty much just do it by myself, and
It
which
is
I don't know if
funny
that's
how
how
that
you do
happened.
yours. Yeah. So that's the story of how it
Super
started.
cool though, like
It's
that.
kind of funny. Yeah.
Yeah, how everything just falls into place like that. So I know that you are active and a huge part of, actually, I can't even say huge part because I don't know. Tell us about like your involvement with like the National Alliance of Mental Health.
Oh yeah.
And just
Yeah.
more
No,
about
it's
that.
yeah, for sure. Thanks. Yeah.
Oh, actually, sorry to interrupt. We totally didn't say the name of your podcast, which is Louder Now, folks. We'll make sure it's
Oh
in the
yeah.
show notes, but
Okay.
it is
No
called
worries.
Louder Now.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah. There's the story behind that too. But
let's
I
hear
had
it.
I had a blog, or have a blog, and I started blogging 2007, right when like Facebook came out. So blogging, I was in kind of Bible college and then this kind of ministry environment, and everybody was blogging. That was like the
Mhm.
thing. And this is before kind of social media. So like if you had a blog and people read it, it's like they read it because you have a cool blog. So
Right.
that, if that makes sense. Like the only thing that
Yeah.
was really around was like MySpace, right?
Right.
So like my friend Zach had a lot of people read his stuff, and he would just blog through his website, which is, to me, looking back, so kind of old school, like blogging through your web. So everybody started like a WordPress. So
Right.
I had a blog called the Ruckus Journal, and that was like a name from like when I was a kid, or in high school. I wrote down all these like funny stories of me and my youth group friends doing dumb stuff. It was not deep at all. And then there was probably some poems in there about girls or something, but it was mostly like ridiculous. But then when I started the blog, that was like a cool name for a blog. So
Yeah.
then after about 10 years of that, I changed it to louder now, like the tagline. Because I was like, well, that kind of connects to ruckus and noise. And then I was like, oh, that's a good name for a podcast. So
Perfect.
that's the story behind that. So anyway, but oh, you asked me about Nami.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Nami is been around I think since like the 70s, and it's basically just a nonprofit, and they get all of their money through donations and maybe some grants and stuff like that. And they basically just do education for mental health. I mean, they use the word, you know, National Alliance of Mental Illness. Obviously, sometimes people don't like the word mental illness, so we use mental health, but they call it
Mhm.
mental illness. And they a lot of what they do is like they have like a family to family class where like if you're your loved one is struggling, you can come kind of to this like 8-week course and like learn about all the symptoms, get support from other people. So they do a lot of just you know in every major city there's probably a NAMI. I mean, I'm in Los Angeles, so there's like 100 NAMIs, but you probably got one where you're at, different affiliates and stuff. But then I've been a part of a couple of their programs where I get to speak. So they have a program called In Our Own Voice, where you share your story, you play some videos, you hear other people's stories, and then there's like kind of question and answer time. So I get to kind of just, I mean, it's short. It's like sum up your struggles in like 3 minutes, and or like 10 minutes total. And
That's awesome though.
yeah, so now I mean it's been like 3 years of that. Then I was working with another program called Ending the Silence, which is mostly geared towards like kids. So I've gotten to go. Before COVID, it was like all in person. So like 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago. And then now it's mostly on Zoom, which now everybody's kind of used to that. So they're
Yeah.
like, oh, this is easy. I just log in for an hour, get out of here. But before it was cool. I used to go to schools and like um I did one in-person event back in October where I went to a high school, and it was kind of weird because we all had to wear masks, so I didn't like that part.
Mhm.
But because you're talking in a mask, it's just
Mhm.
sharing with
Yeah.
people. But it's been
Really takes
really
away
pretty.
from some of that interpersonal language, like not being.
Yeah, and I've just always, I mean, the podcast is one outlet of talking about things. It's your own podcast, so it's like, well, you can just do whatever you want. I mean, Nami, I don't necessarily do whatever I want. I mean, there's a format and stuff. Um, but yeah, it's been pretty amazing just having the
Sounds like
opportunity
it.
to share and connect with people and like kind of talk to people who are really like a lot of times the question and answer time, people ask some like hard questions, like they
Yeah,
ask you
so
some stuff. Yeah,
let's go to those hard questions, and I'm
yeah,
not going to be specific, but
sure.
like what has brought you to this point to have a desire to like speak to people on your story? Like share with us like where what is your journey and how has it brought you to this point?
Yeah, wow, big question. Well, in summary, I got a diagnosis in 2007. I guess I'll tell a little background. So I was almost 22 when I got a bipolar diagnosis. That was the diagnosis. Um, for those of you that don't know, there's like two types of bipolar. They're very similar.
I don't think I
Usually,
knew that.
well, yeah, there's type 1 and type 2. One, I think, is more like mania is your thing, and then the
Mhm.
other one's more like depression's kind of more the thing,
Mhm.
but bipolar, has both
Gotcha.
anxiety anyway. So they're similar, and I think the way you get it is just depends on your history. Like if you have multiple episodes, people go, oh,
Right.
you're more like this. Um, so 2007, I had grown up as a kid. Like I think I had ADHD.
Mhm.
My dad, I didn't have a really good relationship with him. He was really abusive and like undiagnosed a lot of things himself. My mom was like a really good mom, awesome, but then my dad was horrible and they stayed together. And so both me and my older sister struggled. Like as kids. And when I was younger, I never had an episode because I was able to sleep, and like I was really good with social skills. Like I was good. I was horrible with grades, but like I played hockey, I was popular, I did, I was busy. Faith was a huge part of my life. I'd grown up in church. So anyway, it all kind of caught up with me in college, which is um, common for that to happen, where
Mm,
you get a diagnosis when you're, away from the home kind of
right.
thing. I was in kind of a really intense sort of spiritual environment. I went to this like house of prayer place in Kansas City, and I stayed up all night. And so that that didn't help, that I was doing that to my body kind of thing. But I got a diagnosis, I got medication, and then I snapped out of it after like 6 months. So it was like this, I didn't sleep for a month, then I got meds, then I was fine, then I was sad. Then I literally went right back to my life before, which is the only time that ever, you look back, you go, that's the only time where when people say, snap out of it, that I actually
That
did
you-
snap out of it. I literally had a
Right.
moment where I was like, why the heck am I so sad? This is stupid. And I just went back to Missouri, and like it almost like it never happened. Then then I had another episode a year later, and then that time it was like a little bit more accepting of the diagnosis, but I got put on like a lot of medication. And then I think it's like when you don't know a whole ton about the symptoms and like how it works, I wasn't thinking, oh, this is a lot of medication. I mean, I kind of thought that. I just was like, oh, I can sleep at night.
Right.
So that kind of caught up with me after a few years, where because I was kind of functioning okay on a lot of meds, I just didn't think like, hey, maybe the doctor should lower this or something, right? So I felt like I was gonna have another episode, but I was on the meds, which that sounds really complicated. So it's like, how do you have an episode if you're on medicines and it's supposed to like stop you from losing control?
Hmm.
So um, a lot of good intentioned people who were spiritual friends and stuff were kind of like, oh, maybe you should get off some of the meds. Like not all of it. No one said all of it, but people were just like your friends, not like doctor.
Yeah.
So the mistake I made was I pretty much just got off all the meds without. I fired my doctor. Like he became like the bad guy.
I fired my doctor.
Yeah, and look, this is very common. If you read people's
Yes.
stories, this is very common that we try to kind of take it into our own hands. And sure, there was anger and bitterness and resentment. Like, oh, what the f, man? 4 years of just over medicating, and now this is
Right.
messing me up. So initially, I did actually okay for like a couple of months, and then it kind of just. So this was 10 years ago. This is like 2012. Then I just basically weed myself down to very little of this one medication I was on that helped me to sleep. And so I had another episode. And the third time around is kind of where I talked about this time a lot on the podcast of being like the worst year of life. Like I know some of your story that you've had a lot of different things, but it's like, well, which one's the worst, right?
Mhm.
And so I think because all of the getting off the meds, anyway, I was really suicidal every day for about 8 months. And I went to the hospital for the first time, in and out of the hospital. Then I had a couple of, acting on the thoughts, which was really hard for everyone. So I
Mhm.
was, so then at about the 8 month mark, yeah, I tried to overdose. My mom had left. She was a flight attendant at the time, and like she had taken a lot of time off from work, but she felt like she could leave me home alone for a weekend, and I was just like really struggling. And the thing was, I didn't really have a lot of like friends. I was just kind of like in Orange County with my mom, just me and her. My sister was like an hour away, kind of thing.
Mhm.
I didn't drive. I didn't really have a job. It was just really, really rough. So I almost died I ended up in a coma from taking like basically all the pills I had.
I
Tried
do
to cut my
remember hearing that.
wrist. Yeah, yeah, it was really intense. And then I'm in a coma, and this church that's in like Pomona, California, which is where I live now, they found out about it. They prayed. I know everybody's in a different place with what they believe, but it really was a miracle from God or whatever you believe,
Right.
right? Like the day they prayed, I came out of the coma. It was that day. It wasn't like, oh, 7 days later.
Right.
So anyway, trying
I
to,
remember hearing that part of your story too.
yeah,
I'm glad to like hear it again and have you share it on here. And
yeah. And I know I'm kind of summing up a lot of stuff here, but anyway, that put me on a journey where I spent 5 months in recovery after that. Like it was the thing that's I don't always talk about that's interesting to me is like even when I experienced the miracle, I know that's more kind of like the spiritual reflection, was that I still was like sad.
right.
I still was struggling, even though I was like, oh, I didn't die. It just
Right.
sounds so strange to say, but it's actually speaks to how complicated this stuff
Uh-huh.
is. Like, even if you survive, and I've been, and look, when one of the things you learn from being in the hospital is you really see people who are suffering, and everybody has like the same kind of story. It's like, oh, I tried to, oh, I almost died. I don't know why I'm here, and then they're like, maybe I should start, you know, getting some help, kind of thing, right? And so it's like the point is that the good news is that it's a process. Like even if you go through something dramatic, it's like you're still gonna have to like work through this now. And then every time I would see my mom, she would be like crying for the first like couple of months that she saw me in the hospital. She's just like, I'm sorry, I get just so emotional, and I'm just like, oh wow, I almost died. Like this
Uh-huh.
is, so now it's been 10 years and I've had relapses and struggles since then. Like the last couple of years, I've had a lot of challenges too. But the now I'm forgetting what you asked me. Oh, why did I start the podcast or why am I talking about these things?
Oh,
I
just your
forget now.
journey, like what your journey has been to bring you to the point here. And so you're
Yeah.
doing
Well,
it.
I think looking back at all of that stuff, and you would probably relate to this too. I think it's like I think before these things happen, I always had a desire to like want to communicate, and want to talk. I think that was like the spiritual influence of like I want to preach and like stand in front of people, which I have done that stuff before.
That's
And
cool.
that's just the way I've always been. I think that's just like a gift. It's a part of Jared. It's not like
Right.
I don't I mean, there's the difference between like talent and then like people who work at a craft. There's like kind of both, like Tiger Woods
I
hitting golf
agree. Like
balls,
being able to like preach and like speak the
Right.
word is a gift.
Well, it is, and then you do work on it.
Right.
So I've always wanted to communicate, and I think I've always wanted to like whenever I take the personality test, right? It's like ENFP and the Inspirer. That's the name of my personality type. Like that's strange. So I'm just like, oh, maybe that's so. Wanting to be like a mental health advocate. I mean, no, I don't think that stuff came right away. I just
Right.
think that now, spent all this time, um, and I still struggle. So it's not like you're far removed from some things, and then other things you're like, oh, I'm having kind of a bad day. What the heck?
Hmm.
So,
Oh, I
uh,
know,
so I
man.
think, yeah, and that's the thing that's just like, um, I guess the point I was trying to make was that like you suffer so much, so you want to really help people maybe avoid some of the mistakes that you made, even though part of being human is that we can't decide for other people. Like you could say, hey man, don't get off your meds, like look what happened to me.
Hmm.
Right, and then someone could go, well, I'm just doing what I want. And it's like, well, you are going to do what you want. That's every human on the planet, and you're
Right.
responsible for your own choices. But hey, listen to me, I don't think you should. So it's not so much trying to save people, but there is an element where you've had your struggles too, and it's like, how can I kind of help people like have hope,
Absolutely.
And so
And I
that's
mean, looking back on like my life and like people helping me, like and then I think about like giving it its space. Like, where would I be if like this person didn't have that conversation with me, or this person didn't do that and help me out with that? Like, people, service to others, I feel like is what we're here for. I mean, really, in
yeah,
the
for
end, you're
sure.
not here just to, live your best life, but to live your best life serving others. But that's my opinion. And I know everyone feels differently.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like love, right, is the most important thing. Like
Yeah.
wanting to be connected to other people, whether you're religious or not. That's like the that's what's all over Instagram every day.
Mhm.
I love yourself, love. And
Mhm.
it's like, geez, give it a rest, guys. We get it. Love. Like talk about something else, you know? And but I do think a part of love is, I know that was a little cynical. It's
No,
like too much
I
time
love
on
your sense of,
Instagram.
I love your personality.
Anyway, love you. Anyway, I'm just like, when you just, if you're not on social media, that's not funny to you. But you know, but I think it's like it is a part of love is sharing your story and like wanting to help
Yeah.
people. That's like a form of caring for others. You know, and there's challenges that come
Agree.
with that, because it's like, okay, do we just be open about everything like all the time or what? You know, but I do think a lot
No.
of people are,
So
well, right.
I
Right.
know I'm joking.
No, 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 no. But, you know what? I got 300 Instagram followers. It's not like a huge. I look at people of like thousands, and I'm like, geez, what do you do with that kind of, influence? You know, but yeah. So I just, in general, it's like giving people hope, and especially with this subject, it's just, there's like one statistic that said like people wait like 10 years to get help from like time that they find out there's maybe a diagnosis, right? And I'm like, well, I guess it took me 7 or 8 years to get it right. Like those first, over medicated, then getting off. And I'm like,
Yeah.
but that, when I read something like that, that's just really sad to me. It's like, wow, why, not in a shameful way. Like, why would you wait
Right.
10 years to ask for help? But it's like part of you kind of wants to shake someone and say,
Yeah.
what's wrong with you? Like, why don't you just go ask for help? Like, what's so wrong with getting help? And like, that's a really complicated process for people. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of
And
reasons why
it's
we
still
don't.
such a stigma, around it. And well, and even not just a stigma, but because it has not been like a prevalent topic in conversation, 50 years ago. So
Right.
now it's still just super challenging for some. And but I'm happy to see that it's starting to become more of a, like even talking about like NAMI and in the, in the title, like mental illness, like,
Right.
or mental health, like it's all in this, umbrella of like, let's just call it what it is. And let's let people know like this okay, but like here's how we try and work with it and just live with it and thrive with it. Like even I need to hear this sometimes. Like, we were the last time we were supposed to have a call last week, legit breakdown, Jared. Like
Okay. Yeah.
it was stupid. I think just because I'm resilient with everything going on in life. And then
Yeah.
there was an issue that someone else is dealing with in my life, a very close family member, and it's like has me involved of trying to help, and it happens to be like in my skill set and like my background in education, like so then I have a lot of opinion on it, and I realize how bad this is, not okay what's going on, and then I'm like just about to lose it and find myself, then I just broke down and I was like, where did this come from? Like,
Yeah.
this is not okay. And so it's just it's never gonna, mental health is always going to be there for each and every one of us, whether it's struggles or so. And so like for people like us and anyone else that struggles with things, like it's never gonna like go away or anything like that, and it shouldn't. It sounds like such a strange statement to say. I don't mean like, basically like your depressed days aren't going to go away, right? The days when you just feel lame or like weeks like this.
Yeah. Well, hey, I back to the story you just shared. I mean, like you said, it was stupid. It's not stupid, but I think you were just being funny when you said that. But
I did.
but it's like, yeah, that's how it is. It's like, okay, sure, if you're doing a lot of podcast interviews, which I've done a lot, it's like, okay, you do need to try to be present with people, and it's like, oh shoot, I've probably done a lot of talks with people where I'm like going through some stuff, and then I just kind of do it anyway.
Yeah.
I'm like, shoot, I hope that they couldn't. Am I good at faking it or what? Or like they
Right.
didn't see, but that is exactly how it is, and I think, yeah, we part of the human experience. I mean, I've there this week has been some challenges with just
Mhm.
my car breaking, and then trying to figure that out, and like just like a lot of changes have been going on, like trying to get a new job, and I'm like, yeah, I'll show up and do this podcast even if it's like I didn't sleep great last night or I got anxiety today. And that's not like a boasting thing. Like I'm so great, I do all these things while
Right.
I struggle. But I think it is kind of a tool and a coping thing I've learned over the years, which is like, um, yeah, when it's hard, you just like not to oversimplify things because I think people can do that. Like, well, man, just go for a walk, or whatever.
Mhm.
Well, you're dealing with trauma, that's probably not going to help, but I you know what I mean. But there is something to be said about when we are in a hard space, like what do we go to? And
Mhm.
a lot of people I think don't have community and like support. So you recognizing that you're like, oh, I'm having a day, I know what's going on, I'm not confused about what's going on. It's still hard in the moment, but you know what you need to do. I'm
Mhm.
guessing, right? You're like, okay, can't do this thing
Right.
with Jared, and he'll understand because I do
Yeah.
understand. Okay,
I know. I appreciate
no
you.
worries, but that's like
And I
real life.
remember
Like,
I'm
what
like,
do you
I'm like,
really
Jason, I'm not gonna make it. You're like, it's
Oh,
Jared. And
Jared,
I'm like, I
Jared.
knew that. It's fine.
That's like my old boss. He got all of our names mixed up. I was like, dude, you're only like 4 years older than me, man. Are you getting like he'd be like, because we had a lot of J's. It was like Jason, Jared, Jose, and he'd be like, he'd call me Jason, and then he'd call Jason Jared. And I'd be like, oh, man, I love you, but we should go get this looked at. No, I'm kidding. But yeah. So it's like, yeah, what do you do when you have bad days? And like your whole podcast, like celebrate the struggle. Like, do you
Yeah.
run away from that? Do you go towards people? Usually we isolate. Like, what do
Hmm.
we do?
I know that. And I really, that is, and that looks different every day, right? It looks different every day for me as far as, like a lot of days, not a lot, but like there's a lot more challenging days than just that one day last week. That one just happened to be one where, um, clearly it was just a kind of a breaking point for me. Um, but usually like I pause and I I do try to read, or I'll listen to like a podcast while I like go do a load of laundry. Not that I like to do laundry or anything, but like
Yeah.
just to step away from whatever is challenge, not to expect myself to like sit down and like let's knock out, 2000 words right now and write,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
like I gotta, or like maybe it's a hot bath, which I'm not even like much of a bath person, but it just
Me
depends on
neither.
the
Me neither.
day,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's nice to get the distraction of like being with my kids and having them take my mind off of it. And sometimes it's like, oh no, I need to go for a walk like by myself.
Yeah.
But
For
that
sure.
actually leads me into the next question. Like what do you do for your self-care, not just on, bad days necessarily, but like just for you, for Jared, what helps to um I'm like, clearly I get the vibe that you are a spiritual person. And so
Yeah. Yeah. Good question. Yeah. Well, that's an area that I think there's been a lot of struggle with that. Like, I feel like I'm still kind of learning. You
me
know,
too.
I go and go and go until like there's kind of like a, hey, you're getting, like, oh, I have a sore throat. Maybe I should take a nap, kind of thing. Instead of like, um, but yeah, to answer your question, I started playing hockey again.
Mm,
I might have put it on my Instagram a couple times, but I grew up playing ice hockey in Colorado, and then I've had a lot of gaps of like not playing.
I think I remember that too.
Yeah, I might have said that when we talked, but I love hockey. Still got all my skates are literally like 20 years old. They're like 2001 skates. So, um, yeah, I started playing ice hockey a few weeks ago, or like a month ago. I skipped church and played on like a Sunday morning. So, for anyone that wants to skip church to do other things. So, but yeah, it's funny because then I saw my friend after, and I told my pastors that I was like, hey guys, I didn't come today because I went and played hockey. I thought that was funny that I told them that. But so that's been helping. I did still trying to do, but I haven't been the best with like exercise and stuff, and just I love sugar. Like I'm drinking coffee right now, but there's just
I am
no
too.
sugar in here.
Iced coffee. So that's
Oh my gosh, iced coffee is. And here's the thing: the funny thing is that, well, I've always been a sugar person, but when I was in the hospital in that 5 month time, the second place I went to, they let us go out, so it was like a long term facility. Because most hospitals, when you think of hospital, you don't think, hey, they'll let us go to Starbucks today. But this place was like, you could go out on the weekends, like your parent could check you out for a day, and then if you were behaved well, you could go like a lunch break. So next to the facility was like Carl's Jr. and like Starbucks. So that's where my iced coffee addiction started. This is
So
like,
clearly you behaved well.
yes, I was. Yes,
You're like, I'm getting that iced
I
coffee.
was I was the leader of the pack, And the thing was, I was doing better, so it was like the hospital was. This might sound strange to say, it was kind of fun. So it was like, I was like playing basketball every day, watching movies, reading books, So, but
Right.
anyway, I did like a no sugar thing, no sugar detox with my friends, through my Celebrate Recovery group, and mostly because I've just kind of needed to like lose some weight and like be healthier. And part of like taking medication is it does kind of have the metabolism effects, but then it's like, okay, well, what are you eating? That's probably more of it, right? Like I probably should weigh more weight based on the medication I take, so I've been trying to kind of keep up with that. We did, and it was kind of like a keto thing too. Not that like keto is the healthiest thing out there, but if you do it for a little while, it will kind of get you craving different things,
Yeah.
because it's like sugar, and then I like rice and carbs, and then it's like you don't do anything. So
Right.
those are a couple of things just that have been helping. And then yeah, I like to read. I've been trying to read more. I love like movies and shows.
Mhm.
Probably way too much, man. I get hooked on. I'm sure you probably do too, but I'm guessing you probably have to be like disciplined because you're trying to write.
Yeah.
So
Actually, I try and like do a double whammy. Like when I have to make myself go to the gym, I'll reward myself by watching shows like on like the Stairmaster, which is
oh
brutal,
nice. I've done that too.
brutal.
Yeah,
Like at
yeah.
least like I'll get like 10 or 20 minutes on like watching, something on my phone.
It's hard, man, especially with COVID. I was just watching stuff every night. And then in my episodes of movies and shows kind of was like a thing that calmed me down. Depends on what you're watching, because sometimes you can watch dark like crime thrillers, and it's like probably this is probably hyping you up, man. But
I
like
know.
anyway, I just watched like The Last Dance about Jordan and the Bulls. It came
Oh,
out 2 years ago, like right when COVID started, but it's on Netflix, and it's like, even if you're not a sports fan, it's like super entertaining
I've
to
heard that.
watch. Yeah, it's really good. It's all about just the background of him and the team. Like,
Right.
anyway, there's a lot. I mean, there's definitely some negative things they show about him, like how
Mhm.
people were like he was a jerk. But anyway, it was really inspiring. And anyway, I can talk about that stuff forever. I've been watching this other show called Cheer on Netflix, which is about this like cheer school in like Texas. So,
Jared, I like your honesty.
yeah. No, it's actually really good. I mean, you would think it's silly, like why are you into cheerleaders? But it's like showing kind of the like competitive drive, focused nature
I
of like the
love
team
cheer
and the
competition.
coach. Anyway, so
I love
there you
watching
go. That's
cheer
what I watch.
competition.
But then I also watch like random like dark crime stuff that I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be watching this. So
Well, that's when you flip it to cheer. You're like, I need something a little bit lighter right now.
so anyway, I hope I answered your question. I
You
mean, the
sure
other thing,
did.
yeah, the other thing is just people. Like I have friends, and Monday nights I go to Celebrate Recovery. We call it
Yeah, I've
Celebrate
heard
Life.
of that.
Yeah. So anyway, for those listening, that's just basically like a 12-step for Christians, I guess is one way you could say it, like taking the Bible and then so some of it's a little bit like some of the questions in the book gets a little bit kind of repetitive and a little bit like, well, I don't know if that's exactly what that means, but um it's just been a really good place. My friends Jacob and Frank have become like brothers to me, and like we're gonna hang out later today. So it's like we're real friends. It's not just like we see each other on Mondays and that's it. Like we talk during the week and text, and so that helps a lot.
Yeah. I had to mute myself because Alexa heard me say celebrate recovery. I said, "What is that?" And then like just gave me like a 20-minute, 30-second spiel right there.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, is your house like tied up to that?
Well, remember I am visiting my friend's house
Oh,
today.
that's
So
right.
like I don't even know who that
Oh, you
Alexa
don't know
was.
because my sister's house is like that. They have like the connected. They'll be like, turn the living room lights on to whatever, and I'm
Well,
like,
it
I'm
is
not
like
looking
one of
at
those
that.
devices, but I don't think it's the lights. But well, thank you so much for coming on here. I want to have you on again sometime, like just like I
Yeah,
like listening to your show. Like I feel
thanks.
like a lot of people can get a lot from what you have to share. And so I appreciate you coming on here and like being
Yeah.
vulnerable and honest to do that.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, I would love to do like a part 2 with you too. I have a
Absolutely.
lot of people that I'm like, oh man, it would be fun. Now it's been like a year. Well, yours was recent, but some people I'm like, now it's been a year. And I'm like, oh, it'd be cool to be like, hey, what have you been doing the last year? So
Right. And actually, what would be really cool that I need to take advantage of way more often, and by more often, I mean do it at least even once, is I haven't done like, like 3 people on, like having those kind of discussions together.
oh
Seems
yeah,
like
that would
something
be fun too. I don't know
right.
how you do that with the Zoom. Does it like
Oh,
record
just all
all of
3 will pop up. Yep, for
Yeah,
sure.
I love that. That would be
I
fun. That's
know.
a good
So
idea.
we'll collaborate on that, and I'll make sure
Yeah.
that everything is in the show notes. And I I have more questions, and unfortunately, my kids are going to be getting home from school, and
Yeah, no
so
worries. I know you
we
kind of keep
must
it shorter too,
continue.
so yeah, it's all good.
Continue.
Cool.
Have a great day, and thank you
All right.
again for
Thanks for doing
showing me
this.
showing me grace and letting being here
Yeah,
with me a week later.
it's all good. I really appreciate it. It's always an honor to get to connect with people and share my stories. So thank you and keep up the good work. I'm excited for book 2. So,
Woo!
all right. Okay.
Right on.